Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Drawn Together. Hopefully those that aren't able to be with us this morning will be able to listen to this recording. So yeah, it's just great to have everybody here, and thank you for joining us. And Jane, again, thank you for trailblazing the way and enabling us to have the opportunity to be drawn together as a group, but also closer to the creative within each of us, as well as the creator, who is the greatest of all. So I've got a few questions that we've prepared before this morning that Jane's prepared some answers as well for. So if you see her or I looking to one side, it's because we do have some sort of script to follow, but knowing both Jane and myself, we might go off piste at times, but we'll try to stay on track. So the first question I have, because we're now entering year 2 of Drawn Together, which is phenomenal, given that it was birthed out of lockdown last year. What's your most precious memory of Drawn Together last year, Jane?
It's the virtual gallery. I loved what you did, Rachel, and I got a huge amount of joy watching how you grew from just being the facilitator into a professional creative. And you did us all proud, I think. You drew from our bits and bobs and wove a single narrative that shows us what we can achieve when we work together. The subject was the rainbow, and together you made us shine. That is my precious memory.
Yes, and when Jane shared that with me, I did say that I cried at that because there was so much that happened last year. And yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody that took part in it last year, because you know, you can only work with what you've got, and I was able to make you shine because of what you gave and what you contributed and what you shared. So yes, thank you for that. I did warn Jane that she'd already derailed me with the first question, but I'm trying to remain composed. So moving on from that, Jane, I want to ask sort of a personal question. In terms of yourself, as one who is creative, how have you developed in the last year?
I think I'm more prayerful and worshipping as I paint. I enjoy the continuous dialogue with the Holy Spirit, who is always more willing to direct than we are to hear. Letting him inspire me and tell me to stop when I'm starting to do my own thing. Being okay about the mistakes in my work, because it means there will have to be a next time when I will try to correct my uninformed marks. God doesn't judge them. He delights in the passion he has birthed in me.
Thank you, Jane. And I think that's one thing that all of us who have been part of the journey so far, and Paul, it's something that you will quickly pick up from Jane, is that she also encourages a passion in us. You know, it's not about being perfect by any means, but it's about being okay with the mistakes that we make in terms of art. And I think Jane is a trailblazer for me personally in being able to move from the perfectionist to a creative, because sometimes they can clash when you're so focused on the end product that you miss the joy of the process of the journey. And I think as Christians, that's important as well, not to be so focused on the destination that we miss the journey that we're on. Now, you've got a brilliant picture painting at your side, Jane, which is very inspirational. Now, that came about because you attended a prophetic art course at Nicholson House over the summer. My question is, aside from the beautiful painting that you're displaying. Why did you attend such an art course?
Okay, well, I felt I'd done a year sort of giving out, and I thought it would be a good idea at the last minute to have an opportunity to take in from professional artists working in the Christian sector up and down the UK. So it was a good opportunity to, especially working with the other attendees and learning from them, but especially James Long, who's a practicing artist in Bath. And this was his brainchild.
Okay. I know that one of the things that you shared with us was actually connecting with other creatives. And as you said, it is important for us to set aside time where we can receive as well as just give out. And if that's the product of your receiving, then I think that's pretty incredible. And my next question is about your subject matter, really. So you've chosen a lion, and my question is, what does the lion symbolize to you? Why did you choose that subject matter?
Okay, I read it, it's faster probably and more understandable. This was James Long's vision of the Lion of Judah. Barry and James decided they wanted every artist to go home with a finished acrylic painting on canvas. So it was technique driven and not my way of working. In fact, I was the only one in the group who used mixed media. I kept saying I wanted to try his way of working. James kept urging me to find my own way. In the end, I took his advice. At least I've tried to work in this more orthodox and conservative style. Now I'm convinced that I'm onto a more liberal approach and less dependent on specialist skills to generate exhibition work. So I can't answer your question because you asked me what it symbolizes to me. Well, I'm an illustrator. I was just doing an exercise.
Thank you. I think that answers the question, because what I wanted to highlight in that question is it's not how you work. And basically the course dictated what you had to do. Yeah. And yet knowing how free you are in your art, that's why I wanted to draw out, why did you go to this? Because it's quite a constrained, conservative view of art, and it's producing a finished product, which is again sort of counterculture to how you teach and who you are as an illustrator. I want to, following on from that though, one thing you shared, that James was encouraging you to find your style. And there was something that came about from painting this lion that I want us to explore now, and it's around the value of mark making. So can you share with us a little bit of what came out of the process of producing this?
I wish I had the brush to show you, right? So we all watch him and then we all go away and do it. And everyone's got their little mobile phones so that they can watch close up on their phone exactly how to do it, right? So I've got the best brush I can, because I don't necessarily have brushes to make lions. And we're doing these whiskers, right? Now, there's the problem with this view of the lion, you've got it back to front. And if I thought about it, I should have reversed the zoom picture that you were seeing so that you don't have everything in reverse. But I'm sorry, I can't do that. So too late.
No, it's fine, actually, Jane. It's okay.
You're seeing it the right way around?
Yes, we are.
Oh, that's interesting. So anyway, I'm doing these whiskers, and obviously James Long does thousands of whiskers every year. He does a lot of lions. And I haven't done a lion, not like this ever. So it's really hard. And the next thing I know, I've splattered paint. I've got a splatter. Can you see?
Yeah.
Lots of splatters, actually. It looks like a constellation of splatter. And I'm getting excited now. This is where I'm at. And, you know, I should imagine 99 people out of 100 would rub them out. But it was like the Lord woke me up and said, this lion wants to speak. This is I'm not going to have him as a silent lion that could be whatever you want it to say or whatever it means to you. This is going to have a meaning for me now. The meaning in this activity only came about when I had this breakthrough. So before that, it was meaningless. But then when I got the splatters, let me read it now. Okay. Rather than wipe the splatter away, I felt I should let my lion speak for itself. Until that moment, I didn't know it had anything to say. Then I was ready to thank God for meeting me in my picture. I was grateful and ready to cry because the act of painting became the dialogue with him. It was less about trying to represent images of creation and more about the all-important conversation with the divine. And for me, it was in the mark and not in the picture making. So when I'd already gone astray right at the beginning, because everybody else was told to center their line in the middle of the canvas. And for some unknown reason, I thought, no, I can't do that because I'm not having a lion sitting there saying, look at me. That's not going to happen. So I shifted my lion to this side of the canvas so that potentially he could be walking this way and then looking out of the picture. So I could finish more lion information. Or alternatively, I could put someone else in the picture. I wanted room to maneuver, and two little itsy witsy bits on the side weren't enough. I needed a big space to say something else, but I didn't know what it was going to be. So when I ended up with this space, and then I decided he had to be black. I quite like these marks too. And then the splatter showed up. It wouldn't have showed up if it hadn't been black. And then I knew exactly what this line was saying, because in scriptures, if this is the Lion of Judah, more often than not, the lions are nasty lions. They're not nice lions. They're pretending to be a nice lion. And they're not. They're prowling. And so I wrote down in sort of graffiti script, I don't prowl. And then that's when I wanted to cry, because he was saying, the Lion of Judah doesn't prowl. He's not a prowling lion. And then I felt, wow, that's what it was all about. And I said that to James then. I said, I'm happy now because I feel as I've got my thing onto this picture. It's not, I've owned it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane. And I think what it highlights from that is how you were prepared to receive, to learn, to conform. You did your best.
I did my best.
But out of it, you allowed the process of mark making, of art making, of being creative. You allowed the process to speak louder than the actual finished article, in order to create a finished article which is more precious to you than it would have been if it was simply a pretty picture. Not to put down pretty pictures that go on the wall, but behind that you have a backstory where God actually spoke to you through it. And when we have a backstory to anything that God speaks to us, it's always more powerful to us. So in terms of Drawn Together, Jane, which we know is not your standard art group about learning techniques, what is your vision for Drawn Together?
The collaboration in this venture, as I feel, it is too much for me to explore. I think the sum of our parts, I think the virtual gallery showed that. That was a glimmer of what we're capable of when we work together. So is it possible God wants to use art to touch our own lives in this profound way? I believe that all of us from the last year will say that that is the case, that God does speak to us while we're painting. I think that's what we've discovered between us. He speaks to us while we're in the process of painting. We're not just mimicking a trend, we let our appreciation of scriptures inform us firsthand. We're reading between the lines and letting something new emerge. After we've been moved by this way of art making, we will have an idea of how God can use it to engage with other people. We are here to encourage and support each other and then the wider community. I'm resisting the God of individualism, so prevalent in the world today. There does exist accountability and collective. And I'm not surprised that artists see this before others usually.
Yes, thank you, Jane. I think what we want to do by taking this time this morning to hear from Jane is actually highlight the journey. So highlight the journey of last year, which many of you were a part of. But over the summer, Jane was part of a journey with the Lord herself, as we all were. And then it's how that impacts the vision that the Lord has given Jane for Drawn Together, but also for creativity. And that includes art, that includes spoken word, that might include dance, that might include poetry, within the body of Christ. And so what the reason why we want to take time this morning, not every meeting of Drawn Together is going to be like this by any means, but it's to set the scene, to sort of say, okay, we've been apart for a season, now we're rejoining, and this is where we want this is what we're the point at which we're rejoining. So in terms of looking ahead to this year of Drawn Together, Jane, and starting with this term, what is your plan for this group?
Okay, so I think it all came about from this mark making, exploring mark making for its own end value without a finished picture in mind, because it joins on what I learned over the last 12 months about keeping things open-ended so that you can make a selection from my what I call primed papers to find the best expression of what it is you're trying to say. So let me read this. So I don't want to start again. I want to continue where we left off and pick up any unexplored avenues that last year revealed. This includes an exhibition next summer, but not online this time. Individuals can choose to participate, although we will all have to think about some techniques and finish statements in our work, which is going to be different from last year. We don't have to be part of this exhibition. That will ask far more than we may feel ready to give. We will let the Spirit lead in this. I just mentioned that because although we're going to head towards an exhibition, it's an add-on, it's not part of the actual class itself. More immediately, we will strengthen our mark-making capacity so that when we do work on exhibition paintings, we'll be up to scratch. Excuse the pun. A rule for this term only, just for this term, is that our show and tell won't be finished work. It will be sharing a process to make a mark. So there is a show and tell, but it is like, here's an example. What I did this morning. Okay, so no, this is a show and tell of an image, and I'm sorry about that, and maybe this will be the last one, yeah? But what I'm trying to say is we're making some paper for us to assemble for a finished piece. So it'll be part of a composition, which we don't yet know about. Next year, we'll work on the compositions. At the moment, we're assembling. So if you're going to show and tell, show how you put it together. I took this from National Geographic. I took the writing from an old envelope. I call this plundering our commercial world. And this bit is the only original bit of my art, which came from the leftovers from another picture. Now, to mention that is because I want people to see how valuable this was. A nothing, this was leftover stuff, but it makes my story in this picture, which is not relevant at the moment, but it's just an example of, where did we get to? Yeah, the show and tell. So when you show your work, can you share it in a way that means other people can follow you? Because someone may not know how to do a texture. Say they want to do a texture of something. Here's an example. I did this last year, which we didn't come back to, which was feathers. This is a print of feathers. I did lots of versions of it. Here's a feather, right? But if you're going to show that, can you show how you did it? So what you're sharing is how to make that mark, not what your picture means. So let me carry on. So we set ourselves free for one term only, which is only 6 weeks really, from recognizable and representative art making. We give each other permission to make marks for their pattern making value alone. This is carrying on from my idea of priming papers and having a resource of prepared textured surfaces to select from. We need a theme for this term, and last year we hung our art on the concept of colour. This term, we will work with animal, mineral and vegetable, spending 2 weeks on each word in turn. What we need to do now is to give each other ideas about marks with animals in mind, because we're going to do animals for 2 weeks. We are not drawing animals. We're not doing this. This is going away. Goodbye, lion. Okay, so we're just making marks now. We're not drawing lions or anything else like that. Where did I get to? This term, yeah, we're going to work on animal, mineral and vegetable, spending 2 weeks on each word in turn. We are making marks either from animal parts. This is an animal part. Example for you, making a mark from a piece of animal. It could also be a shell from the beach or even cuttlefish, anything. I got wool. I've got a broken bit of shell, which I especially love. Look at this. That will lend itself to birds, wings, angels. So the broken shells are actually more interesting, I think, sometimes. I mean, they are a dead house, aren't they? Right, let's go. If you think about it, a lot of traditional art making tools and materials are animal sourced. May this foundational activity be both fun and rewarding, letting the marks be a language of its own, open to further development next term when we decide what to do with all our prepared papers.
Okay, thank you, Jane. So the understanding that I have is in the next few weeks, we're going to be making marks, not finished works of art, but papers, really, or parchment or whatever, ready to be used another time. And the example that Jane shared this morning, because every morning Jane spends time with the Lord, and in her quiet time, that's how she expresses how the Lord speaks, is by creating something. And this morning, Jane, if you'd like to share what you did this morning again.
Do I need to? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just I just want to mention something on it. because in the picture, if you can't find it, doesn't
there
matter.
it is. Yeah.
In the picture that Jane's produced, the bottom piece of paper is what she's referring to as the mark making. And actually that has grounded this picture. Without that piece of paper, which could have been a throwaway, there wouldn't be a foundation to that picture. It's literally grounded it. It's literally anchored the horseman onto it and given something for the word to speak from. So I just wanted to highlight the value really of that mark making that we would, you know, many of us would put in the bin, and yet it's become a foundation of a work that she's produced this very morning. Thank you, Jane.
Yeah.
So,
can I just say to Paul,
yeah,
because this is all new, my way of working.
Yeah.
I don't agree with stealing people's copyright. So this is not possible as publishable material because I've got other people's art in it. This is someone else's art, which I wouldn't steal. But what I'm doing is I am borrowing another artist's skills, and I would use this as the draft of my own piece of work. But I've already starting to get an assembled composition from this. So this would be like a first draft of a potential finished piece of exhibition work. It could be, but it wouldn't have his work on it. It would be mine.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jane. Well, I hope that what this little interview sort of style thing has done is bridge the gap between last year, the summer, this year, and where we're going. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand back over to Jane now, and she's going to lead more of what Irene, Paula, Helen, what we're more familiar of in the format of Drawn Together. So Jane, I'm gonna hand it back to you now. Thank you.
Okay. What do I need to do? I just need to move that so I can see what I'm looking at. I have to keep moving everybody else's picture around so that I can see my image, you know. Can you read that the right way round?
Yeah. Yes.
It's so weird because for me it's back to front. Anyway, this is where we interact, where I want you to start thinking about what we could use to make marks. I've already suggested this. I mean, this could be used, so I'll put feather on first, yeah? At the moment, October is the month when chickens, anyway, they molt.
Okay, looks like the internet is not playing ball, Jane's end. So let's see if she'll come back. Thankfully, it did.
I'd frozen it. It's always like I was moving. Am I moving or is it?
There we are. She's
back
now. You're back now, Jane. We got to the point where you said October is the time when chickens molt.
Okay, so you know, if you want to keep it simple, then find some feathers and play with them. Do whatever you like, right? So here is idea one, feather, and you could put paint on them and print them. You learn a lot by doing this about left hand and right hand feathers and which feathers they are. There's so much to learn from it, and it makes some beautiful marks, yeah? And even your most rubbish mark could actually be the most effective one for your purpose next year. So keep it all. It's all going to be really useful. And you may, if you're doing feather, you may want thin paper. Explore whether you want thin or something a bit thicker. Anyway, I've done enough talking now. So suggest something else to incentivize each other for what we're going to do for the next 2 weeks.
Fair.
Hair.
Fur.
Good. Yeah.
As she said, fur. F-U-R. F-U-R. Fur.
Yeah, I got it.
Helps if you don't speak Yorkshire, isn't it?
A wire cleaner, you know, one of these.
Yeah, no, the thing is,
Rubbing
we're doing animal, mineral and vegetable. So the wire would come in mineral because it's a metal. Okay.
Oh, so we're
I'm
doing
breaking down our artist materials into animal, mineral and vegetable so that we can explore by limitation, because this is a very good way. Like if you put your thumb on a garden hose, the water goes further. So what we're doing is we're limiting what we can use. We're not using metal and we're not using vegetable. We are limiting what we can use in order to explore its usefulness for us to make finished paintings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so although you've raised an interesting point, Paula, because if we used a wire pad, it might make an animal mark, might make a really convincing animal mark. Like, how would you make snakeskin, for example? I don't know if a wire pad would make snakeskin, but what we can do after this term is mix and match and let the wrong material speak, because it sort of lends itself to a mark for a particular idea.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make any sense?
Yes, perfect sense. Yes.
Oh, good. So we're just going to spend 2 weeks thinking about how we can speak animal without drawing an animal. And here's an interesting question. I'm really sorry to give you this, but it's theoretical. Whoever devised the idea of animal, mineral and vegetable game, they assumed people were animals. And if we include ourselves, we can use our hands.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yes, or fingerprints, lots of.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll put body. Out body. But the problem is, are we insulting ourselves by calling us animals, or are we okay to carry on with that?
Oh, I'm not a mineral or a vegetable, I trust.
Exactly.
Although we're made up, actually, we could come into any category because we're made up a lot.
We are mineral because we're elements. We're made up of elements. So therefore, we are in the mineral category, and our bodies are full of microorganisms, which are the vegetable side. So probably we're all everything. We could come into everything. Because you know what? The elements, we're like stardust from the birth of stars. Death of stars, rather. Hours. There we go. So that means that gives you loads of scope. You just work with your own hand. Is there anyone who hasn't made a suggestion?
Because I haven't made one. So going back to what you were showing us before, skeletons or...
Yeah, I got that down. Bones.
Yeah, or bones.
Yeah, that's great. So the challenge will be, traditionally, I suppose someone would have carved it to make it the tool that they needed, the bone. Otherwise, you're going to have to wrap something round, like this shell. How would I get the marks from the shell onto my surface that I was making? So, you know, something that would endure a bit of wet to wrap it round, because when it's wet, it's going to stretch a bit and go into the creases, but we don't want it to tear. But if it tears, it's part of the process. We'd use that as well. Because I've got examples of experiment,
aren't we?
Sorry?
We're going to need to experiment a weeny bit.
Yeah, we're scientists.
This is quite interesting.
Yeah, we are scientists. How would you get that mark off the shell onto where you want it? And also, do I clean it first? Because I got this from erosion at Rossili. And so I'm excited because this has been buried in the clay for so long and I haven't cleaned it off yet. I've been assuming there's nothing in there, right? I think it's been dead a long time and it looks empty to me. I can't hear anything there. But I've decided that I want the dirt. I want to make the mark out of its dirt. So next week, I'll let you know how I got on with that. Thank
It
you, Paul.
encourages me to go for another walk along the beach shore.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly that, Paul. I thought, oh, good. I can actually go out for a walk and just not feel self-indulgent because I'm doing it for a reason.
Yes. Yes. See what you can find that you would like to make marks with. I mean, you're like your cave painter now. What have you got? What's lying around?
Could you give the 4 categories, please? I'll write those down. So animal,
Animal.
animal, yeah.
And then I thought we'll do mineral next. And then finally, we'll do vegetable. I did a brainstorm beforehand to see with art materials, but I didn't want to give them to you. I wanted you to think about them yourself because I don't know how many things you've got. But traditionally, paintbrushes were made of animal hair, not synthetic.
Yes.
So even the different brushes are named after the animal that they were made from, like a squirrel. The most famous would be sable hair. That would be your most expensive brush. So where the sable is the best quality, that would be named after that region, you know. Bristle is still really common. Actually, I've got an example here. I could use this for an animal mark. Not that I'm going to use my new hair. Oh, sorry about the hair on it.
Use your
Get the hair off. I did it from the wrong way around.
Don't throw the hair away. Keep it.
Yeah,
It's mark making.
It's two
Okay,
in
so
one.
This is bristle. Can you believe it? It's bristle. It's much nicer for my hair than plastic. This is probably from a boar. In fact, I know it is. It was on the list, on the wrapping. It's from a boar, right? So I'm putting a boar through my hair. And I'm not going to use this brush to paint with because it's too precious to me. But I might want to choose something else to represent that,
It.
make the mark. Get rid of it.
Well, you could do all sorts, couldn't you? You know, I mean, if you cut your nails, you know, and
Yeah.
you could do a print of your little nail bits.
Yes.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
once my front tooth fell out. That would have been a good one, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Right, has anyone not mentioned anything before I show you my list?
Irene, you haven't said anything, have you?
No, I'm not really sure. You know, I use all these things, I suppose, but I can't think of anything. Sponges that you find.
Yes, a sponge.
That's a good one.
That's right. Let me find a sponge.
Oh, that would be animal, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of them were originally only the animal variety that was used.
Yeah.
I've got one in here. I keep a sponge. Not that it's kind to the sponges in the Mediterranean, because they've lost so much of their populations because they've been overfished. That's an animal.
Mm.
That would make a lovely mark. We use it for all sorts of things. But if you don't have an animal sponge, use a synthetic one, pretend it's an animal sponge.
Yeah, we won't tell anybody.
Yeah, thank you. This is, by the way, this is squirrel. That one. I love it. It's an oriental brush. I cut the end off because it didn't fit in my palette.
What about eggshells?
Yes, and eggs. And eggs. Remember?
And eggs.
Yes, of course. Eggs were used in painting. It's a painting medium.
The yolk.
An emulsion, isn't it? It's an emulsion.
Irene, do you know what it's called?
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Is it tempera? Tempera.
Yes, tempera.
Yeah. So the egg yolk is pricked. I've seen it on TV. Someone pricks the egg yolk and then puts the brush straight into the yolk. And that's the medium that the mineral pigment is mixed in before you paint. From the Renaissance on.
Gosh, we'll all be doing that. That's a good
Yes,
idea.
well, you could work with egg. If you do the research on the internet, you may decide to spend the first week on the research. Try and have something to show next week if you possibly can, but don't worry if you can't. Just turn up. Even if you haven't got anything to show, turn up, right? And then the week after, you can push the boundaries of it more experimentally. So if you want to spend some time this week on looking at your materials and how you could use an animal source product. Here's another example, bee. A bee produces lots of byproducts. You could use wax, so therefore you could go down wax resist. Or you could simulate the textures. If you're buying honey, sometimes there's the texture of the honeycomb. You know, go towards something that's simulated to be already, so it's already gone through a process. It's in someone's design, but you could still use it. Here's an example. I save envelopes, right? This envelope has got honeycomb on it.
Oh.
So if you want to keep your hands clean, you know, you can work with something that's already designed. But I'd suggest you get dirty for the first week and really see how much fun you can have with it. It's foundation work, and it's how children learn to paint. So we're going right back to the beginning. We're making marks and we're just enjoying them for the marks that have been made. You give a kid a brush, they go bang, bang, bang. They don't care what it looks like. And that's what we're doing, you know.
If you had something like mud, you know, I mean, which was well used in the past, would that be vegetable then?
It's vegetable, really. Mud.
Yeah.
Mineral, really, isn't it?
Yes, this is why we're going to improve our
Quite interesting to think about it.
Yeah.
We are going to be studying our planet, dividing it into 3 categories, and realizing, because we're all Christians today, but I won't always do it from the Christian point of view, you know, but as worshipping Christians, God has given us the diversity in our planet to speak back to him. And we've got brains as well to make sensible decisions based on how we want to worship our God. And we've got the whole planet to use, haven't we?
Yeah.
So, you know, we're going to say, have animals got something to say? For me, the Bible was conveyed off papyrus, which was vegetable, onto a herd or a flock. It became an animal product. So animals were sacrificed to make the Bible. So we're going to start thinking like this, you know, about how skins have been used for God's message.
Jane, I was just thinking a bit off piste. I'd love to try and get some animal paw prints.
Yeah, that's of course.
Excellent.
Or you could all plaster into it to get the prints. That's what people do, isn't it? And you're welcome to come up to the farm and get anything.
And make a cat go through a muddy puddle and go on some paper or something. Yeah. If I come with a load of scratch marks next week, you know, it went a bit wrong.
Oh, look, this would make fish.
Yeah, well, it is a fish.
It would make a different type of fish. But I knew someone in Yorkshire who used to carve these.
Wow.
Any questions?
What's up to that? No.
Let me just 2 things to show you. Here's my list. Paintbrushes, feathers, sponges, beeswax, silk, wool, skin, egg. Then less common things, shells, animal fossils, bones. And to finish off, the homework. See how you can make marks with an animal-derived product. So it doesn't have to be the animal, it could be its byproduct. Yeah.
Good.
Rubbings are good. Printing or using as a brush tool. So I could actually dip this into an ink which is made from, originally some black ink was made from a creature. But you know, you don't have to get complicated, just use anything. But it's talking about animal and animal, isn't it?
Don't crush some beetles.
I'm done.
It does, they do cross over, don't they? So,
Yeah.
I mean, even if you were talking about mud, I mean, mud on the beach is different to mud somewhere else. So it could be, you know, an animal-based mud or...
You know, you are quite right, Paula, because when you think of sand, sand is broken down shells.
Yeah.
So although sand is an element, it's a mineral,
Mm.
silica, isn't it? It is actually derived from an animal source.
Yeah, you've got the
So
animal
we're going to
side.
find that this is not as simple as it seems.
No.
As I look out on my garden, one of the things that I can see, if I look carefully enough, is bird poo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Seagulls in particular.
Yeah.
So,
Oh my goodness, that would be so contemporary, right? You put a big piece of paper down and your pattern will be the poo that arrives on it. You know, a very famous artist has been working with elephant poo.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mm. Very
It's in
animal.
all the big museums, elephant poo.
Yeah.
Not museums, art galleries.
I'm not sure how many elephants there are here in South Wales.
I know, but you say seagulls, so you could work
That's
with
your challenge for the week, Paul.
Yes. Well, you could go on to urine then, couldn't you?
Well, yeah, that's what people do, and blood. They do the whole works.
Yeah.
But
What do
we
they
don't
do
need
with,
to go
what
that
can
way.
you do with urine? I mean, it's got a colour, isn't it? But yeah.
It's got shades of colour, actually, if you think about it.
It's got what, sorry?
Shades of colour. It can
Shades,
be from
yeah.
almost white to very amber, or even red.
And
Yeah.
it's an acid, so if you put it into a paint, it would change it. wouldn't it?
Interesting, yes. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I forgot to tell you how I made this one. Does anyone remember how I made that one? It was indrawn together. This was shaving foam.
Oh,
Sarah was trying to get us to do a print off shaving foam. I found it really tricky, but over Christmas last year, I did eventually find the right shaving foam and I did manage to make some marks. And I quite liked it, although it was something and nothing. More misses than actual print. But even so, it suggested, as soon as I saw it, I said, oh Lord, waves. And I was really excited because blue would have spoiled this picture. I'm
Yeah,
so
it
glad
would.
that was the colour it turned out to be. Dirty, because it was going to have a load of guys with their chariots stuck.
Mm. Happy accidents.
Yes, exactly.
You
Yeah.
mentioned multimedia.
Yes.
So can we use this little exercise in multimedia?
Absolutely. Be free. This is your term to play. It's like foundation art.
Right.
And we're just going right back to the beginning where we just play with our materials so that we become, we know how to use them and what works.
Okay, so what I'm saying is it doesn't have to be just painting.
No. You can, I guess you can do photographic because you could be
That's
photographing.
more what I was thinking in
sport.
terms of. I've got
Yeah.
little thoughts in my head, yeah.
Yeah. Or you just photograph an animal, I suppose.
But that's boring.
That's a cop-out though.
I think that's dipping out. That's just like painting an animal, isn't it, really?
Yeah, yeah.
So I won't do that, I don't think.
Okay, so back to my list again. I probably missed out something really obvious, but there we go. You may think of something else. So you can either just keep it simple, like go through some things that you've got access to, like it at the very basic, use any paintbrush and see how many different kinds of mark you can make with that paintbrush. Even if it is
That would be
synthetic, you can
interesting.
pretend it's an animal product.
You know, soap, natural soap, which I buy. What's anyone know what it's derived from? Could it be
What's
used
that?
for
So
soap?
mineral.
So
A mineral, the pure, pure natural soap.
Yeah, when we get onto mineral, we can do plastic.
Yeah, but right, okay.
I
But
don't
does
think
anyone
it's
know
animal
about
derived, is it? It's not animal derived unless you say the fat is.
fat in it? Yeah.
I think pure soap is animal derived, isn't it?
Is
Is
it?
it?
I think it is.
Yes.
I think it
Pure
depends on the soap.
Okay.
You'd
Oh,
have
you
to
said
look at
soap.
yeah. You'd have to look at the
Oh,
ingredients.
I thought you said something else. By the way, glue is animal, isn't it? Traditionally, gum
Yeah.
arabic was animal. Oh, was it? Have I
Pure
Pure
remembered
soap will
that?
have lanolin in it.
Yeah.
Huh?
Say pure soap will have lanolin in it.
Yes.
Lanolin.
You know what? In the
Lanolin.
old days, people used to carve soap.
Yeah.
It can also have honey in it, which is another animal product.
Yes.
But so it could be a hybrid between animal and mineral, which is what you were saying, Jane. It's not going to be as easy as we think to compartmentalize certain things.
Yeah, so we're going to be very flexible with this. This is just an opportunity to play, not to tick science boxes.
Well, how nice to be told you must play now.
Yeah.
Thinking
Yes,
that,
at
Paula,
this
to be
stage
honest.
of life. For somebody say to you, you must play. It's important.
Yeah.
Yes, I think my Solomon would do anything to have homework that said, well, your homework is to play.
Play is learning for a child, and it is for us.
And for an adult.
Yeah.
Irene, I know I was asked, I did ask if you would share, but because so many people are missing this week, shall we do the share next week regarding what we were talking about? I think leave it till next week, because when we've hopefully got more people here.
Yeah.
It was nice really for you, Paul, to have a smaller class today, because if there's anything you want to ask.
Well, can I say from the outset, I've been involved in art in some form or other for quite a long time. In fact, I went to art college. I've never been challenged as much as I've been challenged this morning.
Yes, true.
To think outside the box.
Stimulated.
And we're very happy to have you, Paul. So, and maybe your art training skills will come in useful to all of us.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I'm a copyist rather than an artist.
Okay, can I just tell you, James Long, who does those lions, he's a graphic designer and he's only trained to copy. And so those lions are derived from that 3 different lions that he's copied off the internet.
Right.
So he is only copying, but I'm not taking that away from him because that's a skill in its own right. It's just that I can't be bothered.
No, I just like the thought of going out and finding interesting things to pick up from the beach now.
Yeah.
It's very healthy and it's therapeutic to do that.
Yeah. I mean, there is a value. I think there's a time for copying, but there's also a time for not copying. It's a time for everything, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
And there's a time for the finished exhibition work. I am not saying it's no good or we shouldn't do it. I'm not saying that. I hope by the end of this year, we can all do finished pieces that will stand in their own right. That's where I want us to go. But we're not, for me, I'm not really there yet. I needed someone to support me to get me to that stage.
Well, I think that our time is coming to an end, Jane. But I'm very excited And I didn't think today I would hear the phrase, what can you do with urine? So thank you for that, Paula. Leaving me with that thought in my head. But yeah, how wonderful, really, Jane. Thank you for taking us on the journey from last year Drawn Together, from how the Lord has spoken to you over the summer, to encouraging us to play and to look at individual items within the world, to the broader view of creation, to look at it from a different perspective, and to give us permission, because I think unfortunately as adults we often need permission, very often from ourselves, to play. And I think it's very exciting about where we're going to go. I'm going to do my best to upload this recording as is to YouTube and send it out. I'll probably put the link, if I can, on the WhatsApp so that others can catch up. But yes, again, thank you, Jane, for just inspiring us and breaking down the journey to a level that even I can understand, and we have something to go away with, to grasp, and as Paula, you said, to actually enjoy. Is actually very healthy to be able to go out and look at things and look what we can find, look what we can pick up, and have the mindset of being creative, because I think it enables us to enjoy moments more, because we're more present, because we're actually looking for something, we're being mindful about what we see around us rather than rushing past things. Jane, I can see you want to share something.
Yeah, just to reiterate about the doodling. This is an example. It's probably a facetious example of Volvo's advertising. Oops, I put it on
the WhatsApp, haven't
right?
you?
But this makes it a really important thing. I just want to reiterate, you can doodle during class. You can, as soon as you have an idea, doodle it. And those first doodles can become the most precious. So save them. So doodling is good.
Doodling is allowed and play is allowed. Praise the Lord.
Oh, great.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you for breaking the mold and just enabling us to learn to be freer within our creativity, and explore it more, because I think that's a very precious thing that you bring that so few bring. And I think it's something that actually, from a believer's perspective, the Lord wants to redeem the arts within his body, and bringing that freedom, that element of freedom in it. It's all about where the Lord is at, isn't it? Setting captives free, and that we can explore him as creator and his creation too. And I loved what you said about, God's given us the diversity of his planet to speak back to him, because that's what it's all about, is that we're using this, the example that you shared this morning, you used what you had to speak to you, but that in turn speaks back to the Lord, because as you said right at the beginning, he delights in the passion that he's putting new. So thank you, Jane, for your time again this morning in fanning that flame within us to encourage that passion within us, to be creative and play. So I think our time is done, everybody. I will stop the recording now.